Welcome and thank you for taking the time to look through the AMP Industry Insights report for Q3 of 2025. My name is Patrick Conium and I am a Senior Analytics Manager with NCS. And today I have here with me
Patrick Callahan. I'm a Senior Analytics Engineer with AMP Memberships.
For all that who are unfamiliar, the information that we're going over today has got a couple of different pieces to it. First, we'll dive into the national trend information, and then Patrick will dive into the AMP-specific case study information that we've got on some new features. Without further ado, I'll just talk about how we've compiled this information for the national trends. So we've got over 7,400 qualified tunnel sites where we've used our database and our data science team to go in and understand the footprints of each of these locations. And then we've been monitoring to see how their activity has increased quarter over quarter and year over year. So the 7,400 qualified tunnel sites are inclusive of all tunnels. So that would be express exterior tunnels in addition to flex and full service tunnels. The split is approximately 80 percentile are express, with the remainder making up the flex and the full service that are going into these qualified tunnel sites. In terms of these 7,400, they are evenly distributed across the nation, and that's how we're able to arrive at these different averages that you can depend on and trust for your national benchmarks. These national trends are brought to you by Rubicon Analytics and NCS Wash Intel in partnership. Below, we'll go into the details of what creates the 7,400 qualified tunnel sites and the national trend. Currently, regional year-to-date, year-over-year wash volume could also be understood as wash count, is driving very positively across the nation. In the central region, we're seeing a 1.9% year-over-year growth from Q1 to Q3. The east is at 1.6%, and then the west is at 0.4%. Year-over-year percentage change that we have down below is, again, an additional perspective on the national trends, where we can see that in the past 5 months, we've seen a downward slope, but happy to announce that it looks like in September, we are seeing a very small deviation from the norm. So that trend seems to be lessening, hopefully back onto the upward swing. Year-over-year percentage change by quarter, we try to present a perspective where you can understand how your site is performing from almost a 2-year perspective in our graph here. So you can compare that Q1 of 2024 to Q1 of 2025 and so forth up to Q3. And as we can see that we've seen some positive trends to begin Q1, Q2 and Q3 have been slightly negative from the norm. But keep in mind, this is in comparison to Q2 and Q3 of last year. And then last but not least, in our interactive report, we've also got the regional breakdown by quarter. So depending on whether you're a multi-site operator in one specific region or if you're touching a few, if not all, we can see how those trends of your operation are aligning or potentially beating the norms of what we understood to be the percentage change by quarter across the regions. Beyond this, we then provide a nice map to give you a visual. We've got a couple of different scales working in this visual that we see. In terms of the gradients, red is negative, green is positive, and what we can derive from this image here is that across the nation, we're generally in the green, which is great. And then if we hover over each of the specific states, we can get a specific percentage performance. Beyond that, if we go over to the state chart and expand that, we can get the full list to understand those trends. But in general, 46 of the 50 states are in the positive, which is showing widespread positive growth in terms of the volume change year over year. That's what we have to wrap up the national data. I'll pass it over to Patrick Callahan now to talk about weather impacts and what it's doing with that information.
All right, thank you very much. So at AMP Memberships, we collect data on hundreds of wash locations, and through that, we're able to get minute to minute and hour to hour volumes for both transactions, so planned sales, but then also wash activity. And we also have a partnership with AccuWeather, And for this particular analysis, we're streaming in 2.1 million data points of weather forecasts and actual weather events. And so by combining those two, we're able to get a very nice relationship between all sorts of different weather events and compare that and correlate that with both wash activity and customer purchase behavior. And because we collect information on both members and non-members, we can also see how those weather patterns affect different types of washes at each location. With this analysis, because we have transaction data on hundreds of these sites, we're able to group our transactions and our wash volumes into both member and non-member. And throughout this analysis, you'll see a set of blue lines and a set of orange lines. And these represent, the blue lines represent our member wash trends, and the orange lines will represent trends that you see for non-members. So we're able to actually not only look at wash trends and transactions histories as a whole, but we can also break it out based on customer type to give us additional insight into customer behavior. We wanted to go a little bit beyond just the basics of understanding that rain is bad, sunny days are good. So we took it a couple steps further, and we really wanted to see some of the time effects associated with weather impacts on wash volume. And for these two analyses, what we did was we took the effect of rain happening just before a given time period and rain happening after a given time period to see what the trends looked like. As you would expect, when there's a decent amount of rain, so 0.1 inches to 0.5 inches of rain, it has a negative effect on wash volume. However, comparing these two charts, the chart on the top is rain that just occurred, and the chart on the bottom shows rain that's about to occur, so in the preceding hour. And what we're seeing is that there is a larger effect just after a rain event, and customers do factor in rain that's potential, looking forward to the forecast at the next hour. However, there is a slightly larger effect based on rain that's actually occurred within the forecast. Again, factoring in both wash activity and a rain time interval, what we did was we broke down rain events that occur at different times of the day. So when rain events occur in the morning prior to opening, we're able to track what that recovery curve looks like in terms of wash count. And what we're seeing is that when a rain event occurs prior to opening, we initially get a decrease of around 5 to 15%, and that slowly recovers throughout the day as the hours pass. And after about 3 to 4 hours, operations tend to level out and hit a normalized value of about around 0%. However, when rain occurs during the opening period, so this would be rain that occurs in the morning, and we're tracking wash activity in the afternoon, there is a much greater effect in the decrease in wash count. And this happens for both members and non-members. But again, immediately preceding a rain event, you're getting around a 10 to 20% drop in wash activity. And that recovery curve takes approximately 4 to 5 hours to recover back to a normalized value after rain stops. As you would probably expect, customers are more sensitive to actually, rain that's occurring during operating hours, and a little bit less so of an effect when rain occurs prior to opening or before opening hours. We looked at a similar recovery curve, and this is anticipating rain events and tracking, again, the recovery over time. This one extends all the way out to 48 hours. And what we're seeing is that after a rain event occurs, the recovery is highly dependent on what the cloud cover looks like after that rain event. So with low cloud cover, we're getting a wash activity recovery of about 4 to 6 hours, in which case it kind of normalizes, and we see that wash activity normalize back to around 0% after that short time period. However, when cloud cover is higher, so it may rain and there's still some lingering effects and some cloud cover after the fact, that recovery curve it takes almost a full day to get back to like a normalized period after a rain event. And again, here we're breaking the data up between members and non-members. And we're seeing that there is more sensitivity to non-members, and members are much more likely to return and resume normal wash activities as compared to non-members. The last set of factors that we looked at, we normalized rain. So this is looking at periods where the rain precipitation amount is zero, and we wanted to see, okay, what exactly is affecting wash volumes besides just precipitation, which we've already established is a negative factor for wash counts. And what we saw is there's kind of three factors that we looked at. We looked at cloud cover and wind speed. Two factors that we looked at: cloud cover and wind speed. And for both of those, you're getting actually a positive correlation as you have completely clear sunny days. You're reaching around a normalized wash count between about 10 and 70%. And once you get above 80% cloud cover, that's really when the wash count and the volume decreases. So operators may be just looking at precipitation for upcoming days, but the actual cloud cover, even without precipitation, does play a factor into wash volume. The other factor is wind speed. So again, it could be a completely clear sunny day with no rain. However, factoring in wind speeds should be something that's considered. And again, here we see up to about 20 to 22 miles per hour. There's really not too much of an effect on customer behavior, but when you get into a really gusty day where there's higher winds, that seems to drop off dramatically as you get above around 20 miles per hour. It does play a pretty significant role in customer behavior and wash volume. The last pieces of data that we looked at were effects of snow. Coming into the winter months, we wanted to take a look and see exactly how snow affects customer behavior. We focus mostly on particular analysis is focusing mostly on the Midwest and Western regions. And what we see is that upon initial snowfall, so when snow cover increases, we're seeing as expected, when snow cover initially starts to occur, we're seeing a pretty sharp decrease in the number of washes. So you could see here in the months of January, we're seeing a pretty drastic decrease in wash volume. But as soon as your snow cover starts to even decrease slightly, so there's a little bit of melt that occurs, this total amount of wash activity tends to increase. And typically from customers wanting to get a lot of the grime and the salt and whatnot off their cars. So again, looking at snowfall is certainly something that operators are used to accounting for, but you also want to see trends in like temperature and what you would expect for snow melt after that initial snowfall occurs. So on top of actual wash volumes, we also looked at some customer activity and customer behavior. So we looked at both our new plan sales and churn rate as a factor of snowfall. And what we did here was we grouped together the number of days within a given time period where snowfall is in the 0 to 3 day range within a given month, 3 to 6 day, or 6+ days. And obviously, we do see that the wash volume is decreasing in those time periods where there's snowfall, but the actual customer behavior of people that do come to the wash, you can actually expect slightly more plan sales at higher price intervals. So there's a little bit more likely to buy those higher price plans and convert at a higher rate. And churn also decreases during those time periods. So customers, if it's slightly inclement weather or months where there's higher than normal snowfall, you can actually expect the churn rate to decrease slightly. And customers do tend to stick around and keep their membership slightly more than average than on days where there's less snowfall. So those are just some of the interesting trends that we're able to identify. We are starting to roll out some weather and AI features now that we do have this partnership with AccuWeather. So rolling out information about upcoming forecasts, what operators can expect, and taking into factoring in some of these insights that we've pulled in this report, and using that from a reporting standpoint and some additional insights in terms of predicting wash volumes and using those for labor prediction. So really appreciate the time, and I'll turn it back over to Patrick Coniam to close us out.
That's a wrap, everyone. Thanks for joining us to review the Q3 AMP Industries report. We'll be back with you early January or mid to late January to review Q4. Thank you.